Hey, good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here. Wednesday now, the 20th day of September 2023. And yes, the tropics are going to stay busy. It does look like we got this one area out here, red. That means high chance of development out across the deep tropics. We're going to have to watch that one. Could be an issue for the islands, or maybe it won't be. The Caribbean islands, that is. We have Nigel still out there, a hurricane. And then this area off the southeastern coast, what is it going to be named? What will it be called? The classification of it, all of that. Well, the bottom line, it looks like it's going to be a coastal storm, and whatever it gets classified as probably doesn't matter as much, of course, as the impacts. So we're going to talk about that and other stuff in today's update. All right, good to have you with me. Let's get started. First, National Hurricane Center. A few X's on the map now, meaning that these systems are now showing up at least percentage-wise within the 48-hour period. 10% for this area and 10% for that area off the coast of Africa. And then there, of course, is Nigel sitting at 90 miles per hour. By the way, not going to be a problem for our friends over here in the United Kingdom. It should die away as it becomes a big extratropical mid-latitude storm way up in the north and northeast Atlantic. But back to the National Hurricane Center page. First area, non-tropical, meaning that it's getting its origin not from a tropical wave or anything like that, a big heat source, but a non-tropical area of low pressure. It is expected to form kind of like a nor'easter, but warmer, I guess, within a large area of disorganized showers and thunderstorms to the east of the Florida Peninsula within the next day or two. This system could acquire some subtropical characteristics on Friday while it moves generally northward. And then this is the important part. Regardless of development, this low is likely to bring gusty winds to gale force, heavy rain, and high surf to portions of the southeast and mid-Atlantic United States late this week and into the weekend. Bottom line, this is going to have impacts, and for a good chunk of this area here over the next several days. And what we call it, I talked about this yesterday, doesn't matter as much as what will happen with it. And then, of course, we have this area that we need to watch. Gradual development is expected as this moves off. And again, we look at the 7-day outlook area for this, generally more to the west than we've seen with these other systems, mainly because it's starting at a lower latitude, and there's going to be a little bit more ridging this time around. So things remain busy even as we head towards the last third of September. So here are our players. This is the gathering weather in the southwestern Atlantic, part of that old stalled out frontal area. We now have convergence down here, air coming together. Pressures are still fairly high, but they will begin to lower. We are going to also begin to develop a pretty stiff and persistent east to northeast wind. That will start to pile up the water against the coastlines over here, and that'll become an increasingly bigger and bigger problem over the next few days. There's Nigel moving on off into the higher latitudes here. Not to worry, no problems with that, of course. And then we have to really start to watch this more. There's some Saharan air and even some dust wrapped into this big old piece of energy. This will eventually make its way to the west with time, and I do believe there is at least a chance of some direct impacts, at least in the modeling way out in time. We're going to want to watch this in the Northeast Caribbean. Not a direct threat. It is certainly well beyond the 7-day time frame. Well, I mean, maybe not, depending on how quickly it can get there. But yes, you folks in the Northeast Caribbean should pay attention to it. You don't need Mark to tell you that. It's hurricane season. You should be paying attention to anything that is still at your latitude, all right? Right. All right, looking at the vorticity signature, not much over here just yet. I forgot to save the image from yesterday, so I'll save the one from today. Too much going on. We were working on some projects on this computer, but this is the area that we're going to want to watch over the next few days, so I will save the image from today. It's probably a way to go back and look at it in the archives somewhere. No big deal. This is, though, where we're going to want to watch, because this area, you know, look at all these little pieces here. They're not very significant. They're also stretched out, and what we are looking for is something that more resembles this. Probably not this. That's a well-developed hurricane, where the vorticity or the energy, the spin, gets more consolidated. We are far from it. That is for sure. Looking at water temperatures, of course, they are still plenty warm out here, 28, 29 Celsius. So we're talking 84, 85, 86 degrees, right up to the edge of the Outer Banks there, the Pamlico Sound and vicinity. So yes, anything that does get going, the big key will be, does it develop banded areas of thunderstorms, or what we call convection, or does it look more like a comma shape, like a nor'easter would look like? Either a comma on its side or one that looks like a typical comma. I know it's hard to, well, let me just draw it. It might look like this a little bit, or it could look like that, depending on how it sets up and the way the energy is distributed. But if it has more banding features and looks more like this, more of that S shape overall with spiral bands, and then everything concentrates around a center better, that's more of your tropical characteristics type system, where the wind is stronger the closer to the center you get, instead of spread out over a much larger area like these more non-tropical or hybrid systems can tend to do. I am inclined to think, based on experience and these water temperatures out here, that we will get something that's going to try to be a little bit more organized and thus more potent than I think most people are anticipating right now. Got to be careful. Don't want to stretch too far and make something out of nothing, because right now we don't have anything down there to worry about. But with those water temperatures as warm as they are, and what we have seen in the past with different systems that did ramp up in that area, as I said yesterday, don't be surprised if this becomes more organized and leans more tropical in its structure than we're thinking today. And the bottom line, though, we're going to get some stiff northeast winds here, piling up the water against the Outer Banks, again against portions of the Mid-Atlantic, into the sounds and the river systems here of eastern North Carolina, and maybe down towards Cape Fear and eventually towards Myrtle Beach area. But I think it's going to be more of an Outer Banks issue. Tidewater of Virginia, eastern Maryland and Delaware, maybe up towards New Jersey and elsewhere. But let's wait and see what happens. It's going to be in pretty short order, though, in terms of how fast this comes together. Today's Wednesday. We're only talking 48 hours, and this thing could be really starting to crank up. So if you have interests in the Outer Banks, maybe you're coming down from D.C. or Ohio. I've personally known people that traveled to the Outer Banks from that area, Alexandria, Virginia, the D.C. area in general, Maryland, again, Ohio. They like to come down to the North Carolina Outer Banks, Nags Head, Kitty Hawk, and even as far south as Hatteras, Ocracoke, Rodanthe, Wave, Salvo, those areas. You need to just be, aware that it could, at the very least, be blustery, sand blowing everywhere, maybe some road problems from blowing sand, some heavy rain, gusty winds, and maybe tropical storm type conditions. 40, 45, 50 mile per hour wind, maybe some overwash, maybe more substantial flooding. Don't really know yet. But just offshore of the Outer Banks, we're talking water temperatures in the mid to upper 80s. Don't be surprised if this is a little bit more potent, as I've said numerous times already, than we are anticipating as of now. This could be a little bit sneaky. GFS, what is it showing? Well, this is from the 12Z run today. 5,000 feet in the atmosphere. We will start with that because that tells us a lot about the structure. And this is the area that we're watching right through here. That's Nigel. That's what a well-developed, mature hurricane looks like at this particular layer of the atmosphere. Move this out 24 hours. Thursday morning, we do start to see the makings of this system. See the bend in the overall 5,000-foot winds through here? Yeah, I see it. You should be able to see it. Still not very focused, though, so let's move out to Friday morning. Now we start to see that energy bundling better around a low-pressure area, presumably right in here. 5,000-foot winds, certainly 30, 40 miles per hour or so, about a mile up. What does it look like down at the surface? So we go from 5,000 feet to 10 meters. Pressure is 1,001 millibars. This green in here, looking at the legend. Anything in the green there, let's just point it out, right there, that's 34 knots and up. You understand? So 34 knots, that's tropical storm force. Look at those easterly winds, northeast winds, blowing right on shore. That fetch there, that could be problematic. That is Friday morning. Moving through Friday afternoon, it deepens, strengthens, whatever way you want to put it. 990. Yeah, I mean, and it's trying to bundle that wind closer to the center there. So either the GFS is overdoing it, or it's got a pretty good handle on this. Remember, it's going to be over that pretty warm water, and even up north here, coming into parts of Maryland and near Delaware, right? Stiff easterly wind, close to 34 knots or higher. So yes, this will definitely raise a ruckus, whatever that means. I just want you to be aware of this. And then it makes landfall, if you will, across the sounds of North Carolina. And then it makes its way slowly up the coast there and then just kind of dies away, right? And that's another clue. Once it makes landfall, it kind of dies out. Tropical systems do that. Hybrid systems typically keep on going, especially extratropical systems. So we got to watch that. In terms of what the rain looks like, we can just get a little bit of an idea here on the precip mode, if you will. Pretty darn heavy rain there across the Outer Banks and eastern North Carolina as a whole, maybe all the way back towards Raleigh. Do we have any football games this weekend? Probably. So just keep this in mind. You got I-95 coming down here, I-40 through North Carolina, 17, trying to think of all my highways, 64 east. Bottom line, folks, if you're traveling here, you got to be mindful of this system, all right? Not a real big deal, at least it doesn't look like it will be, but not nothing either. So that in between, just making sure you're aware. Weekend's coming. People are going to be busy traveling. Football weather. It's fall, right? Well, yes, but then we also have this whatever storm it's going to be. And that's the problem with these. It's like that movie Jaws. I know I've used this term and this analogy and whatever before. But remember when the mayor was talking to the police chief there? He's talking about raising awareness and maybe even alarm bells. You say shark, and everybody gets upset. You say barracuda. I'm paraphrasing here. People say, what? Barracuda? Yes, tropical storm, hurricane. That gets people's ears perked up. Subtropical storm? Non-tropical low? Whatever. Then you get out on your boat, and there's 40-knot wind and big waves, and your boat capsizes, and you go, well, man, I wish I had known about this. Now you do. That's the idea. No matter what it's called, that's what it's going to look like on a surface map, if you will. And that's a significant weather system. You got to treat it as such. You know, everything matters in the weather when it's bigger than you. You got to look at it that way. Now, real quick, I want to expand this out to the entire North Atlantic real quick. This is 60 hours. Let's just take this out to a week right there. And I got to show you something very important. Yeah, that. And then there's another one, right? That is 1 week out. We need to watch that very, very closely. 7 days is not 10 days. It's not 16 days. It's not 3 either. But the GFS potentially sending signals, if you will, that area that is off of Africa here today could end up right there. That's 66 hours. And then, of course, another 100 hours or so, or whatever it is, there it is, on out a week's time from now. So we got to watch that closely in case we have to deal with that. Seriously. All right? So just keep your eyes open. That's what we're here to make sure we understand. Hurricane season's not over, not by a long shot. It's been very busy. Probably going to stay busy from here on out, it does appear. The Euro, by the way, don't want to leave this out. Not nearly as enthused with our coastal system as you can see there. But these are 24-hour increments. I don't have the luxury of full frames just yet. But that still is a pretty decent system overall. That's Saturday morning. That would be bringing pretty good northeast winds in here. So yeah, coastal problems, regardless of which model and what in the world we call it, we still have to pay attention and be ready. And just to expand this out to the full frame as well of the whole North Atlantic, and again, just trying to be fair here, that's what the Euro shows, much weaker and much farther to the north and east. Still has that other system too. So a battle perhaps between the Euro and the GFS once again a week out in time. Look at that. There's a week on the GFS. There's 1 week on the Euro. Real quick before I let you go, great source of information here, National Weather Service homepage. You can just click on Eastern North Carolina as an example. Gale warning, small craft advisory, gale watch, Some of these statements already going up. I will be looking at this much closer tomorrow because we should get a better idea of what we're going to be expecting. They will probably have it, National Weather Service, Newport, Morehead City, in the weather story section right here. And we'll take a look at that tomorrow because we'll get closer to the event happening. Just from experience, these types of coastal storms can cause flooding and disruption. So that being the case, 90% sure that late tomorrow afternoon, early evening, I will make my way, because it's pretty easy to do, up to the North Carolina Outer Banks, maybe even stopping, I know I go through New Bern, but with these types of setups, you can get flooding down here near Union Point, and I'm going to make my way out here, eventually ending up in Rodanthe, where I work with several people that live out there. We have sort of our own laboratory, if you will, that when nature turns against us, we put instruments out there to see what happens, and I will be doing just that, unless this whole thing just looks like it's going to be a non-event, and I won't have to go. But I'm thinking it's going to be worthy of my time and attention, so I'll be making plans for such along the North Carolina Outer Banks starting late tomorrow through Friday and Saturday. And if it gets really busy out there and this thing really cranks up, Highway 12 will probably be cut off. I'll be staying in Rodanthe for an extra day or two. That has happened before, and it won't shock me if that happens again with this system. Then we got to watch what's coming way out off the coast of Africa. It just keeps on going, doesn't it? All right, that is it from me for today. As always, thanks for tuning in and giving me a part of your day. I hope you learned something. That's part of my goal anyway. From all of us at Hurricane Track, we thank you. The back end team, me, everybody, we all appreciate you tuning in. I am Mark Sudduth, the host of this thing, and I'll talk to you again probably tomorrow morning.